Hey, YouTubers, it's Money Mindset Coach. Worked really hard today and I am really tired. But I wanted to talk today about. I did a video, gosh, last week about some health things that I was going to be dealing with. And one of them was an endoscopy that I was supposed to have. This is Wednesday. I was supposed to have an endoscopy on Monday. And this is just a kind of a tale about if you are on Medicare. I'm 66, so I went to have this endoscopy because I had told my doctor that my mother or my grandmother had esophageal cancer, my mother had esophageal problems, and my sister is having them now. And he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I think you ought to have an endoscopy," which I've never had. And so I go in to get it done on Monday, and they had told me on the phone that it was a $5,000 procedure and that the copay or the deductible for Medicare was almost paid. So I think all I would owe was 200 and some dollars on the day of the procedure, and the rest of it would be paid by Medicare. So anyway, I'm in there. I've got the IV. I've got everything, and the doctor comes in to talk to me, and he says. He was just asking me questions, and he said, "Well, what symptoms do you have?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I get heartburn sometimes, and I said, "The whole reason I'm here is because I have family history of this." And he said to me, he said, esophageal cancer is very rare. He said 2 in 200,000 people, which I was like, wow, that is rare. Well, then I Googled it and it said 4 in 100,000, but still, that's really pretty rare. But he said to me, he said, he said, you don't, he said, yeah, you have the family history, but as far as symptoms, there's a chance that Medicare isn't going to pay for this. And I just kind of looked at him like, oh my gosh. And I said, well, what would I end up having to pay if they don't pay? And he said, well, it's thousands. And so, I thought about it and thought about it, and I didn't end up having it done. I didn't end up having it done after I found out how rare esophageal cancer is, how my symptoms are not that bad. He said, you can always get this done at another time. He says, you don't have to get it done now. He said, you can even come in and talk to me. Well, number one, I was impressed with this doctor because he could have easily done the procedure. He could have done it. Was he going to care who paid for it, who got the bill for it? No. A lot of times doctors will just prescribe things and they're not really thinking about what that could cost the patient, I mean, they say, oh yeah, go have this done. Oh, go have that done. When really you have to count the cost of medical procedures. And I still remember my husband at the time, his doctor, a GP, was going to do some injections into his knees. And it was going to make his knee, because he had bad knees and he's had a knee replacement since then. But, it was one of those things to where it was like, we're like, okay, if this is going to take the pain away, let's go ahead and do it. These injections, these 2 shots cost $6,000. Now the insurance paid $4,500, but we still owed $1,500 for these. And it's like, my God. And the thing that bothers me is, did that doctor know that this was $6,000? Or did he just think, hey, insurance is going to pay for $4,500? What did he get paid by doing it? Because it only took 5 minutes for him to inject these shots. So I was really impressed with this doctor for the fact that he talked to me, and that he told me, he said, I really don't think you need this. And my boyfriend, he's a surgical tech, and he kind of, when he saw me later on that day, he said, yeah, I kind of told you. He didn't think I really needed it either. But I kind of thought, okay, I better get a look at my esophagus to make sure it's okay. I'm not going to do that if it's going to cost me thousands. I'm just not going to do it. So, well, all I can say is that if you're going to get a medical procedure done, call the place up that you're getting it done and find out what the cost is. Find out what your insurance is going to pay. You got to know these things going in, because you don't want to get a big bill later on. If you do get a bill from a hospital, and most of the time it will just say you owe $3,000 or whatever it is, call them up, say, I need an itemized bill of what this all adds up to, because you have every right to know that. And I have done that many times, and you find out some of the outrageous things and the way that you're charged in a hospital. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And that's why our healthcare system is pretty messed up. Because I tell you, if those charges were not so high, the insurance rates wouldn't be so high. Things wouldn't cost so much. Things could be so much better. So much better. But anyway, I've spent enough time on that. The other thing is the last video I told you about the etiquette book that I have that is from over 100 years ago. It's 1921. And with wedding season coming up, last video, I talked about the courtship 100 years ago. Well, this is the proposal. So this is interesting. Okay. At one time, not so very long ago, it was considered an I can't even say it. A revocable law of etiquette. I'm tired. That a young man obtain the formal consent of a young woman's parents before asking for her hand in marriage. Prevalent customs have almost eliminated this formality. I was kind of surprised that at 100 years ago they were talking about not really having to do that. Modern mothers and fathers, by the welcome which they accord him in their home, show a young man whether or not they think of him eligible for their daughter's hand. So basically, they're going to know if they like the guy, and the guy is going to know if the parents like him. It's pretty obvious. And it is really a much wiser plan to object to a friendship when it first begins, instead of waiting until it's developed into something more serious. If the young man wishes to proceed upon the old-fashioned formula, he may do so, first assuring himself insofar as he is able that his attentions are welcome to the young lady. The time for the proposal depends upon attending circumstances. Someone has said that there would be fewer divorces if more proposals were made in the middle of the day under ordinary conditions. But the timid or romantic youth usually prefers the witchery of moonlight and the magic of solitude. The proposal itself should be sincere and earnest. Glowing terms and impassioned emotion are indeed very bad taste. And often The more simple a proposal is, the more forcibly it expresses the suitor's ardor. If he is accepted, the well-bred young man will immediately seek the young lady's parents and impart the happy news to them. At this point, if it has not already been disclosed, it is customary for him to reveal his true status, financially and socially, and answer politely any questions that her parents may ask him. If there are dissensions, he must explain calmly and carefully, making sure all the time to keep complete control of his feelings and not to allow himself to become either angry or impatient. That's interesting. So it looks to me like when you've asked the lady to marry you, that her parents are wanting to see your financials. They want to know, how much money do you have in savings? How much money do you make? How good are you with your money? And I mean, back then, gosh, there weren't too many women, I guess. Maybe back then it was still where a woman got married and she kind of quit working. Well, if a woman is going to quit working and her husband is going to support her, her father is going to want to know that he can support his daughter, because he's not supporting her anymore. Because back then, 100 years ago, women weren't moving out and having their own apartment. They moved from the parents' home to living with her husband. There was no in between, which I gotta tell you, I think that every woman, every young woman, would benefit from having her own apartment, taking care of her own bills, working, taking care of herself. Otherwise, she's going from her father's house to her husband's house. And I think that independence right there is a good thing. I had that. I had that for almost 10 years before I got married. Now, I have to say, by the time I got married, was I ready to have another income in there to where I was doing this with someone instead of doing it by myself? Yeah, I was really ready for that, because I was tired. I was tired of paying my own bills. I was tired of worrying about money. You put two incomes together, you just can do more if you do that. But that 100 years ago, women weren't having their own apartments or anything. They weren't living on their own. I actually listened to a podcast today by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, which you remember her as Elaine on Seinfeld. She's got this podcast that it's called Women Wiser Than Me, and she talks to women that are older than her. And I think she's in her 60s also. But today she was talking to Billie Jean King. And I got to tell you, what I did not realize is that in 1966, which I was 8 years old, women couldn't get a credit card in their own name, which blew me away. I didn't know that. They couldn't get their own credit card until 1975, I think. That was the first year that a woman could get her own credit card. Well, I graduated from high school in 1976. So right before I was 18, women had the right to get their own credit cards. So that never bothered me. I never dealt with that. I got my credit cards. I didn't think a thing about it. I didn't know that just the year before I couldn't have had my own credit card in my own name. The other thing is, oh, I forget, but in 1966, women couldn't sit on a jury. How silly is that? Why wouldn't a woman be able to sit on a jury? Unless they would think that, you know, they weren't smart enough to be able to discern guilt or innocence on a defendant. Why was that? Why was that? And that's the thing, is there could have been a woman who was being on trial for something, and there were no women on the jury. They were all men. Would that have been fair? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I was just blown away by some of the things that I learned in this podcast. Billie Jean King is an amazing, amazing lady. I was so taken with her and everything that she had to say and how articulate she was. She's 80 years old and she was fabulous. I learned so much. So if you are looking for a podcast, if you're older, I'm 66, so if you're older like me, and you want to listen to the wisdom of women that are older than we are, I think it's great. I think it's awesome. So anyway, the other thing is I painted my wall, and I'm not quite done. You can't see up at the top, but you can see over there. Yeah, I got some trim painting to do, so that's why my room looks the way that it does. It'll look much better. It'll look much better for the next video. But anyway, I'm still doing my no buying clothes for the year 2024. Part of what I do when I do my video is I wear something different every time. So until I am totally done wearing everything that's hanging in my closet, you will not see anything twice. And so I will be wearing something different every time. Most everything that you're going to see is thrift store. I'm a big believer in the thrift store. You get good quality stuff for not a lot of money. And as much as I love clothes, that's the best way to buy clothes, is when you go to the thrift store. So I'm really looking forward to that in January of 2025, because I am doing this. And I tell you, I think my budget has really reflected that. I'm not spending money on clothes at all. Now this particular thing, it's, I don't know, sometimes I remember the brand and sometimes I don't. This one is Blair. And I think you remember Blair. It was like a catalog or something. I remember my mom ordering from Blair. I never really liked their stuff, but I liked this, so I bought it at the thrift store. I didn't really care. There's certain brands that I look for, but then there's other things where I just look at it, and if I like it, I buy it, and I don't care what the brand is. But anyway, that's what this is. I got it at the thrift store, and so that's about it. I really don't think I have anything else for now. But I really like this etiquette book, and I've done the proposal, the courtship, the proposal, then we'll get to the wedding. It's just really interesting how they did things back then. So different than how we do it now. And no cell phones. I don't know what my grandmother would think right now if she knew what what the etiquette or what lack of it that we have now with cell phones. You know, texting people, ghosting people, you know, all the different things that happen when you are texting. There's just certain things that's just not right. And sometimes I could really do without my cell phone. I really, really could. And I'd like to get away from that, definitely. But anyway, until next time, if you do like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That's big for the algorithm. Comments would be wonderful. If you have etiquette, you know, things that you've learned over the years, or that you think is something that was back then that maybe we should have now. Or have you had a medical procedure that has been way more expensive than what it should have been, or that you got charged? You know, medical debt is one of the biggest reasons for bankruptcy, is because of medical debt. Last thing I'll say is, if you have a bill from the hospital, don't pay it with a credit card. Don't do that, because then you have no negotiation with the hospital. They've already gotten their money. Negotiate, talk to them, do whatever you need to do, but you know, pay it over time. I have done that. I have paid thousands of dollars and set up a payment plan with no interest. You can do that if you don't have the money to pay it. You don't want to pay it with a credit card and be paying 22% interest or whatever your interest is on your credit card. Don't do that. That is not a good thing. So anyway, that's all I gotta say right now. Use it up, wear it out, make it do, do without, or do without. Till next time, bye.